1929, the Belgian surrealist René Magritte painted what appears to be a perfectly ordinary tobacco pipe. Underneath it, he wrote, "This is not a pipe." At first, the statement seems ridiculous. We can see the pipe. It's right there. But Magritte was correct. We cannot pick it up. We cannot fill it with tobacco. We cannot smoke it. It is not a pipe. It is paint arranged to represent a pipe. Magritte called the painting the Treachery of images. The work challenges the habit of confusing an image with the object it represents. It draws attention to the space between the thing, the sign used to represent that thing, and the meaning we assign to the sign. Art critics describe the painting as a challenge to the convention of treating an image of the object as if it were the object itself. Nearly a century later, education is facing its own version of Magritte's pipe. A student submits an essay. It has a clear thesis, organized paragraphs, academic language, and a confident conclusion. It looks like learning, but is it? An essay is not learning itself. It is a representation of learning. Traditionally, educators have treated the finished assignment as evidence that a student has researched a subject, struggled with difficult ideas, evaluated evidence, revised their thinking, and developed an informed position. The assignment is a sign. It points towards an underlying process of learning that the instructor cannot directly observe. That arrangement was never perfect. A polished assignment has never guaranteed deep understanding. Students have always received assistance from tutors, editors, peers, templates, search engines, and other tools. Generative artificial intelligence did not create the gap between the appearance of learning and learning itself. It made that gap much harder to ignore. When an AI system generates an essay, a computer program, an image, a presentation, or a business proposal, it can produce something that looks convincingly like knowledge. The output can be polished. It can be well organized. It can use the language of analysis, reflection, and expertise. But an AI-generated explanation is not evidence that the student understands the explanation. An AI-generated argument is not evidence that the student has reasoned through the argument. A fluent answer is not necessarily evidence of critical thinking. Like Magritte's pipe, the output is a representation. The danger is not that AI can create convincing representations of knowledge. The danger is that education may begin treating those representations as proof that learning has occurred. Most early conversations about generative AI in education focuses on whether it should be banned, or whether students were cheating, and whether AI-generated writing could be detected. Those questions are understandable. Academic integrity still matters, but they are largely reactive questions. They focus on controlling the technology after it enters the classroom. The deeper question is more difficult. What constitutes learning when AI can produce the assignment? If a student submits a well-written report, are we assessing the student's understanding and synthesis of learning? Or are we assessing the quality of the prompt, the capability of the AI system, or the ability of the student to cover the tracks? And if AI can generate increasingly sophisticated representations of knowledge, how can educators distinguish between the appearance of competence and competence itself? I would argue that although generative AI offers significant opportunities to support education, its greatest challenge in higher education is student over-reliance. Over-reliance complicates traditional ideas about academic integrity and exposes the limitations of assessments that focus mainly on finished products. The appropriate response is not simply to prohibit AI. Post-secondary institutions should redesign assessments while intentionally developing AI literacy, including critical evaluation, ethical reasoning, and responsible AI use. The goal is to preserve authentic learning while preparing graduates for a world in which AI will increasingly be a part of their lives. A major step toward today's generative AI systems came in 2017 when Ashish Vaswani and his colleagues at Google introduced the transformer architecture. Transformers made it easier for models to identify relationships across long sequences of language. The architecture eventually became foundational to large language models known today. Large language models are trained on extremely large collections of text. In simplified terms, they learn statistical patterns between words and pieces of words. When a user enters a prompt, the model predicts a sequence of language that is likely to fit the request. That process can produce remarkably coherent results, and it can also create a powerful illusion. The response sounds intentional. It sounds as though the system understands what it is saying. It may imitate the language of reasoning, reflection, confidence, or empathy. But the fluency of the output does not guarantee the content is accurate, supported, or appropriate. The public release of ChatGPT on November 30th, 2022 brought this technology into ordinary homes, workplaces, and classrooms. Its conversational format allowed users to ask follow-up questions, revise instructions, and generate complex material without needing advanced technical knowledge. Suddenly, a student could generate an essay outline, summarize a reading, write computer code, create a study guide, draft a presentation, produce marketing copy, or develop a lesson plan within seconds. Previous educational technologies often help students locate information or complete calculations. Generative AI can create something that resembles the entire finished academic product. It can produce the sign that educators have traditionally used as evidence of learning, and that changes the problem from one information access to one of educational meaning. It would be easy at this point to frame AI entirely as a threat, and I think that would be a mistake. Generative AI can be genuinely useful in education. A student who does not understand a difficult concept can request another explanation, then a simpler explanation, then an analogy, and then a practice question. A learner who is uncomfortable asking questions in front of a class may ask privately. A multilingual student can use AI to clarify unfamiliar language before returning to the original source. Students with disabilities may use AI alongside speech-to-text, text-to-speech, translation, or other accessibility technologies. Students learning online, working full-time, caring for families, or studying outside normal class hours may receive immediate support when an instructor or tutor is not available. Kisnisi and colleagues describe possible applications of AI such as including personalized explanations, formative feedback, writing support, practice activities, research assistance, professional training, and accessibility. They also emphasize that these opportunities depend on critical oversight because the systems remain vulnerable to bias, inaccuracy, and misuse. Meanwhile, Talili and colleagues similarly found that both enthusiasm and caution among early users of ChatGPT in education. Their study concluded that the technology could be powerful, but the educational use requires clear guidance, thoughtful pedagogy, and attention to ethical concerns. Educators can also benefit. AI can help create initial examples, draft practice questions, vary a case study, reorganize instructional material, or generate alternative explanations. Used carefully, it may reduce time spent on some routine tasks and create more space for mentorship, individualized feedback, and interaction with others. And there is an important workforce argument. Graduates are entering professions where AI is increasingly used for writing, administration, analysis, coding, design, research and communication, and decision support. A college or university that simply prohibits AI may prepare students for a workplace that no longer exists. The useful distinction is not simply between using AI and not using AI. It is between using AI as a scaffold and using it as a substitute. As a scaffold, AI can help a learner reach levels of understanding that may otherwise be difficult to access. As a substitute, it can remove the need to understand. The same system can perform either role, and the examples shown here are only a small subset of possibilities. A student may ask AI to explain a theory and then compare the explanation with the textbook. Or the student may ask AI to apply the theory, write the analysis, format the paper, and produce the conclusion. In both cases, AI was used, but the learning is not equivalent. That is why rules based only on whether AI is present are often too simple. Educators must ask what intellectual work remained with the learner. Learning is often uncomfortable. A blank page is uncomfortable. Not knowing how to begin is uncomfortable. Discovering that your first idea does not work is uncomfortable. Trying to understand two viewpoints that disagree with each other is uncomfortable. But discomfort is not always evidence that education has failed. Sometimes it is evidence that the learning has begun. Robert and Elizabeth Bjork use the idea of desirable difficulties to explain that some learning conditions feel harder in the moment but support stronger retention and transfer over time. The learner must retrieve information, generate a possible answer, test it, make mistakes, and revise. Those processes may temporarily reduce performance while strengthening long-term learning. Not all difficulty is desirable. Inaccessible course materials, confusing instructions, arbitrary deadlines, and unnecessary technological barriers do not improve learning. A student struggling for any reason should never become an excuse for denying support. However, there is meaningful difference between removing an unnecessary barrier and removing the thinking required to develop a competency. Generative AI can compress the learning process. A task that once required a student to organize ideas, compare evidence, draft a position, and revise an argument can now be completed in seconds. That speed may be valuable after someone has developed the underlying skill. An experienced writer may use AI to accelerate a routine communication task. An experienced programmer may use AI to suggest a familiar code pattern. A professional designer may use it to explore variations. But the situation is different when novice AI users avoid developing that skill in the first place. A student learning to write arguments needs to practice forming arguments. A beginner program needs to experience identifying why code fails. A nursing student needs to develop clinical judgment before relying on an automated recommendation. A marketing student needs to understand audiences and persuasion before accepting an AI-generated campaign. The question is not whether AI saved time. The question is what the student was supposed to learn during the time that was saved. This connects to the idea of cognitive offloading. Briscoe and Gilbert define cognitive offloading as using actions or external tools to reduce the mental demands of a task. People have always done this. We write lists, we use calendars, we store phone numbers in our devices. We use calculators and maps. Offloading is not inherently harmful. It allows human beings to extend their abilities and manage complex environments. But its consequences depend on what is being offloaded and whether the person still develops the underlying capability. Generative AI introduces a powerful form of cognitive offloading because it can do more than retrieve information. It can participate in analysis, synthesis, explanation, planning, drafting, and decision support. It can produce work that appears competent even when the person using it could not produce or explain the same work independently. I think of this as competence without capability. The product appears competent, the learner's capability remains uncertain. Research is beginning to show why the design of AI support matters. In a large field experiment involving high school mathematics, Bastani and colleagues compared different forms of generative AI tutoring. Students with access to unrestricted GPT-style tutors performed better during supported practice, but some later performed worse when the AI was removed. A more careful designed tutor that provided structured hints rather than simply giving away answers reduced that negative effect. The study focused on high school mathematics, so its results should not automatically be generalized to every post-secondary discipline. However, it illustrates an important principle. Support that improves immediate performance does not necessarily improve independent learning. Guardrails that preserve student reasoning can make a meaningful difference. Over-reliance also creates an illusion of understanding. Generative AI often communicates with confidence, even when an answer is incomplete or wrong. A fabricated source may look authentic, a biased assumption may be presented as neutral, an oversimplified explanation may sound authoritative. Students with strong disciplinary knowledge may notice these problems. beginners may not. This creates a difficult paradox. The learners most likely to need support may also be the least prepared to judge whether that support was trustworthy. Kesnisi and colleagues therefore argue that educational use of language models must include critical thinking, fact-checking, human oversight, and awareness of bias and systems limitations. That last question, how do you know, may become one of the most important questions in AI-enabled education. What evidence supports the answer? Where did the information come from? What assumptions shaped it? What perspective is missing? What would make you reject the output? Those questions require judgment, and judgment cannot be demonstrated through polished language alone. That is why the core issue is larger than cheating. A student might comply with an institution's AI policy and still rely on the technology so heavily that very little learning occurs. Another student might use AI extensively and learn a great deal by challenging it, correcting it, comparing it with credible resources, and explaining why its initial response was inadequate. The meaningful distinction is not simply how much AI was used, it is how much thinking the learner retained. If prohibition is unrealistic and unrestricting use can weaken learning, students need something more useful than a list of rules to follow. They need AI literacy. AI literacy is not simply knowing how to open a chatbot. It is not memorizing a collection of prompt formulas, and it is not learning to accept new technology enthusiastically. Long and McGarko describe AI literacy as a collection of competencies that allows people to evaluate AI critically, communicate and collaborate with it, and use it effectively in areas of life. A later systematic review by Almatrafi, Jauhari, and Lee identified 6 recurring elements across AI literacy research: recognizing AI, understanding it, using it, evaluating it, creating with it, and navigating it ethically. For simplicity, I organized those ideas into 4 practical components. Pillar 1. Understanding the tool. Students should understand, at least conceptually, what generative AI is doing. They do not all need to become computer scientists, but they should know that a language model produces responses by identifying and extending patterns in data. They should understand that the model's fluency is not proof of factual accuracy. They should know why hallucinations, bias, and inconsistency can occur. They should also understand that the system's output may reflect assumptions, exclusions, and inequalities present in its training data. Demystifying AI makes it easier to use thoughtfully. It also protects students from 2 unhelpful extremes: treating AI as an all-knowing authority or treating it as an incomprehensible threat. Pillar 2. Communicate with purpose. The second pillar involves purposeful communication with AI, often called prompting or prompt engineering. A useful prompt requires a learner to identify an objective, provide context, define constraints, consider the intended audience, and explain what kind of response would be useful. That process can support communication and problem framing. But prompt engineering should not be taught as a collection of tricks for making AI produce a perfect answer. The purpose is not to make the system obedient. The purpose is to make the learner's intention clear. Students should also learn that the first response is rarely the end of the process. They may need to question the output, revise the request, narrow the scope, provide better evidence, or ask the AI to expose assumptions. Used this way, prompting becomes a form of inquiry rather than a shortcut to completion. Pillar 3. Evaluate the output. The third pillar is critical evaluation. This is where AI-supported work becomes genuine intellectual work. Students should verify factual claims using credible sources. They should locate original studies rather than relying on an AI-generated summary. They should compare different perspectives. They should recognize unsupported generalizations. They should identify where an answer is missing context. They should decide whether the recommendation is appropriate within the discipline. Finally, they should be able to explain why they accepted, revised, or rejected the AI suggestions. The AI can generate possibilities. The learner remains responsible for judgment. Pillar 4. Use AI responsibly. The fourth pillar is ethical and responsible use. Students need to understand when AI assistants should be disclosed. They should avoid placing confidential, personal, or proprietary information into inappropriate systems. They should consider copyright, authorship, bias, fairness, and the consequences of using AI-supported recommendation. They should also preserve their own agency. Nguyen and colleagues identify learner autonomy, privacy, accountability, transparency, fairness, and human-centered values as central ethical concerns in AI-supported education. UNESCO similarly recommends a human-centered approach in which generative AI supports rather than weakens human agency. Its guidance emphasizes privacy, inclusion, critical evaluation, appropriate policy, and the need to protect the role of human judgment in education. Responsible use, therefore, means more than avoiding plagiarism. It means remaining answerable for the final decision. A student should not be able to defend an inaccurate recommendation by saying, "The AI told me to do it." In professional life, accountability remains human, even when production is partly automated. Together, these four pillars change the educational objective. The goal is not to produce students who can get impressive answers from AI. It is to develop graduates who understand the systems, communicate with them intentionally, evaluate their outputs critically, and decide responsibly when or whether to use them. But teaching those competencies is only half the response. Assessment must give students a reason to demonstrate them. Academic integrity used to appear relatively simple. A student completed an assignment, the instructor assumed that the work represented the student's knowledge and abilities. Of course, the reality was always more complicated. Students can use tutors, editors, peers, translation software, search engines, and other forms of support. Generative AI expands that complexity. A student may use AI to brainstorm, reorganize a paragraph, edit language, generate examples, locate search terms, translate text, produce an outline, or draft most of the final submission. Where exactly does acceptable support become inappropriate substitution? There is no universal answer. The answer depends on learning outcome. Using AI to improve the tone of a workplace email may be reasonable in a professional communication course. Using it to write a personal reflection may undermine the purpose of the task. Using AI to identify a bug in an advanced programming course may reflect a workplace practice. Using it to generate foundational code that the student cannot explain may prevent essential learning. Sullivan and colleagues argue that higher education should adapt teaching and assessment to the reality that generative AI is widely available, while still attending to academic integrity, equity, and the quality of student learning. The first institutional response is often detection. If AI is the problem, detect the AI. But detection is a fragile foundation for educational policy. In a study of multiple AI text detection systems, Weber-Wolf and colleagues found that the tools were not sufficiently accurate or reliable, and that paraphrasing or other forms of text modification further reduced their performance. A detection score also cannot tell an educator whether the student learned. It cannot determine whether the use was pedagogically appropriate. It cannot explain who made the important decisions. As well, it cannot show whether the assessment measured the intended competency. Dawson and colleagues argue that assessment validity is a more productive focus than cheating alone. Validity asks whether an assessment provides credible evidence that students have achieved the intended learning outcomes. If an AI system can complete the assignment without the student demonstrating the required capability, then the problem is not only misconduct. The assessment may no longer be valid evidence of learning. This is a semiotic problem again. The assignment is a sign. It points towards competence. But if AI can produce the sign independently, the connection between the sign and the competence becomes uncertain. If AI can produce the final artifact, assessments must reveal more than the artifact. That does not mean abandoning essays, reports, presentations, design, or code. It means placing the final product inside a wider body of evidence. Instead of asking only, what did the student submit? Educators can also ask, how did the student reach this conclusion? What decisions did they make? What evidence did they trust? Where did AI help? Where did it fail? What changed during revision? And can the student explain the final work independently? Process-based assessments can include planning notes, annotated drafts, source evaluations, prompt records, version histories, feedback responses, and short reflections. The purpose should not be to create surveillance around every keystroke. It should be to make reasoning visible. For example, a student could submit an AI-generated response and then critique it. The student might identify factual errors, locate missing evidence, examine bias, rewrite the argument, and explain why the revised version is more credible. In that assessment, the AI output is not mistaken for learning, it becomes material for learning. The student demonstrates a capability to use AI effectively, understanding what the system can and cannot do, communicating with it purposefully, evaluating its output, and using it transparently. Authentic assessments can ask students to apply knowledge in situations that resemble disciplinary, community, or workplace practice. Instead of reproducing information, students may analyze a case, respond to a client, design a campaign, develop a prototype, make a recommendation, or solve a complex problem under realistic constraints. AI can be permitted where professionals would realistically use it, and the student remains responsible for interpreting the situation, verifying information, adapting the response, and defending the final decision. Niemanen, Berriman, and Ajawi argue that authentic assessment should account meaningfully for the digital realities of a student's future professions, rather than adding technology only for convenience. This approach is especially relevant to competency-based education. Competency-based models focus on whether a learner can demonstrate clearly defined knowledge, skill, and judgment. They do not treat time spent in class or completion of a polished assignment as sufficient evidence by itself. In an AI-enabled environment, the distinction becomes increasingly important. The question is not simply whether the student produced an acceptable deliverable. It is whether the student can demonstrate the capability represented by that deliverable. The learning experience is contingent to the process, not the outcome. Oral assessments can provide another layer of evidence. This does not require returning every course to high-pressure oral examinations. A 5-minute project defense, interview, demonstration, or follow-up conversation may be enough. An instructor might ask, why did you choose this approach? What alternatives did you consider? Which AI suggestion did you reject? How did you verify the information? What would change if the context were different? These questions reveal understanding that may not be visible in the finished work. They also give students an opportunity to show ownership of their thinking. Portfolios and progress journals are useful because they show development rather than a single moment of performance. A portfolio can contain early work, unsuccessful attempts, feedback, revisions, finished products, and reflections. It can also document how AI was used across different stages. This is especially appropriate in fields such as design, business, software development, communications, healthcare, and professional education. A progress journal does not only ask what can the student produce today, it asks how has the student's judgment and capability developed over time. Not every assessment needs the same AI policy. Some tasks may allow or require extensive AI use because the objective is responsibly human-AI collaboration. Other tasks may limit AI so that students can practice a foundational skill. Some activities may be completed without AI because independent capability is itself the learning outcome. For example, students may use AI during a major project but complete a short oral explanation or in-class application without it. The objective is not to trap students. It is to gather evidence from multiple sources. A balanced assessment system recognizes that support, performance, and independent capability are both important. Yes, they do. That is one of the strongest reasons not to ban it. Graduates should know how to use relevant technologies efficiently, but workplace productivity and education are not identical. An employer may care mainly that a report is produced accurately and on time. An educator must also care whether the student is developing the judgment needed to evaluate that report. Using AI after developing foundational knowledge is not the same as using it to avoid developing that knowledge. Education should prepare students to work with AI without becoming incapable of working when the system is unavailable, inaccurate, or inappropriate. It can. Broad prohibitions may remove meaningful support for multilingual students, students with disabilities, online learners, and students balancing education with work or family responsibilities. Responsible assessment redesign should preserve these benefits. The goal is not to make learning unnecessarily difficult. It is to distinguish support that increases access from substitution that removes the intended learning. That risk is real if education focuses only on shortcuts and prompt tricks. But students are already using these systems. Avoiding the subject alone does not prevent dependence. It leaves students to develop habits without educational guidance. AI literacy should include restraint. Sometimes the responsible choice is to use AI. Sometimes it is to use AI for only one part of the task. And sometimes it is to decide that AI is not appropriate at all. For educators, the starting point is the learning outcome. What must the student be able to understand, perform, create, or judge? Educators must ask whether the current assessments still provide credible evidence of that outcome when generative AI is available. We must make AI expectations specific to the task. AI allowed and AI prohibited are often too vague. We must explain which forms of support are acceptable, what must be disclosed, and what the student must still demonstrate independently. For students, transparent AI use statements should become the norm. A brief statement could identify the tool, explain how it was used, and describe how the output was verified or revised. This should not automatically be treated as a confession of wrongdoing. It can be evidence of professional accountability. Students should ask themselves, could I explain this without reopening the AI tool? Did I verify the claims? Did the system expand my thinking or replace it? What decisions were genuinely mine? For institutions, AI literacy should be developed throughout programs rather than confined to a single optional workshop. Students in business, healthcare, technology, education, design, the skilled trades, and other fields will encounter different risks and responsibilities. AI literacy should therefore be taught within disciplinary contexts. Institutions should also provide equitable access to approved tools, establish privacy protections, support faculty assessment design, and create policies that are clear enough to guide decisions without pretending that every course has identical needs. For employers and industry partners, the conversation should focus on durable capabilities rather than proficiency with one current platform. Tools will change. Graduates will still need judgment, communication, adaptability, ethical reasoning, multidisciplinary knowledge, and the ability to evaluate automated outputs. Partnerships between industry and post-secondary education can help create authentic projects and clarify which human AI competencies are genuinely valuable in a professional practice. Finally, more research is needed. Long-term effects on learning, critical thinking, creativity, professional identity, and independence are still emerging. Institutions should not assume that increased productivity automatically means improved education. They should examine whether students remain capable when AI support is removed, or whether different assessment approaches provide credible evidence of learning. Magritte was not arguing that images were useless. He was a painter. He understood their power. His point was that an image and the thing it represents should not be confused. The same is true of assessments. An essay is not learning. A presentation is not learning. A test score, a design, a project, or a piece of code is not learning. Each is a representation. It is evidence from which educators infer that learning has occurred. For a long time, those representations were difficult enough to produce that the inference often seemed reasonable. Generative AI weakens that assumption. It can produce the appearance of knowledge quickly, fluently, and convincingly. But that does not make education meaningless. It means education must become more precise about what it values. If education values only the finished product, AI will often be able to provide it. If education values questioning, interpretation, judgment, ethical reasoning, creativity, growth, those qualities must become visible in teaching and assessment. The answer is not to pretend that AI is going away. It is not to treat every student as a potential offender. It is not to accept polished language as automatic proof of understanding. The answer is to teach students how these systems work, how to question them, how to verify their outputs, and how to use them responsibly, and when to think without them. It is to design assessments that reveal not only what was produced, but who made the important decisions and what that person learned while making them. Artificial intelligence can generate representations of knowledge. Education must continue developing the person who can judge what that representation means. That is the difference between the work that merely looks intelligent and a learner who has become more capable. This is not a pipe. And this is not necessarily learning. The task for higher education is to make the difference visible.